In this day and time, having a USB port in your car is a must-have essential. Not just for charging your phone, tablet, but now dash cams or GPS mounts require USB power. Well, instead of coughing up $10 to like $40 and purchasing that manufacturer kit, you could easily create one just by using an old cigarette USB lighter and make it permanent to your car. So let's get started and I'll show you how to do that. Alright, to begin this DIY on hardwiring a USB port to your car, we'll need a standard USB cigarette lighter. In my case, we're using a dual LED, some soldering tools, electrical tape can work too, but for a stronger hold, I'll recommend soldering if you can. One of these wiring tools, you can literally find these things anywhere, or scissors or pliers will do as well. A circuit converter, or better known as a piggyback fuse. Consult with your owner's manual to find out what size fuse your car takes. A terminal ground connector, and some AWG silicone wires. And one fuse, since this one's a dual USB, 5 amp fuse should work just fine. But for a single USB, 2 amps will work. And one big note, don't add a 20 or a higher amp fuse. You do not want to start a fire in your car. Now since we got everything, let's now take apart our USB cigarette lighter. Be careful not to break the internal board, and watch out because some of them may spring out like that. And this is the board that we want to get out. The center bottom will be the power and the sides will be the ground. Once we have that located, we can begin getting ready to connect the two wires. Take out the wire tool and split the red, and then solder them or twist them together to connect the two. Then repeat the same to the ground. Once that's done, we want to prevent the two cables from touching. So let's wrap them up with electrical tape. And it should now look like this. Now we can wrap the entire body into one piece. Our last two steps, we will need to connect our red wire to a circuit converter, and you can do this in any method. So to give you an example, I'll be using all three. Using a clamp and a heat shrinking tube, now we can connect the ground to the terminal. And I went ahead and used a heat tubing again. And for demonstration purposes, I wrapped them up with electrical tape. Kind of overkill, but just to give you an example, out of these three, you could pick one. Now that's ready, so let's begin to install it to the car. And last minute disclaimer, do this at your own risk. I'm not held responsible if you screw up and set your car on fire. I have been using this in my vehicle for about 2 weeks now and have experienced 0 issues. But if there's a mistake or something you caught, I'll make sure to correct that if it's a big mistake. The car that this will be getting installed to is a 5th gen Camaro. So if you have one, you can simply follow these installation process. And if you're installing this to a totally different car, I will highly recommend referring to the owner's manual to locate the cabinet fuse box. And if you have the fuse box located somewhere totally different, you may be required to run the cable through a firewall and into the vehicle's cabinet. There's a couple of ways you could do this. The best method is to simply connect it to the outlet fuse, since that's guaranteed to have 12 volts, and that's what we want. But if you have a hard time locating the outlet fuse, you can also use a multimeter and look for it that way. To do this, you'll set your multimeter to 12 volts DC. Then hold the grounded meter to the car metal part like the chassis and hold it. Tap the top of the fuse until we find one that says 0. Once we find one, mark it and go ahead and turn the key of the car to the first position to turn on the accessories. And if it reads 12, then that's our fuse to connect to the new circuit. We want to connect the fuse that will turn on when the car is on, so when the vehicle is off, it won't drain power from the battery. But before you tap into it, it's always important to double check and see what the fuse is connected to, because you do not want to mess with the airbags or the alarm, causing a failure in the future if something were to go wrong. So back in the Camaro. So once located, simply use the fuse removal tool if your vehicle includes one. If not, you could simply pull it out with your hands or pliers. Just be super careful. And it's okay to remove other fuses or relays if they get in the way. Just make sure you place them back once you're done. So once that's cleared out of the way, we can use that fuse and install it to the piggyback fuse. Put it on the very first slot on the bottom, because the other one will be used for the USB cigarette adapter that we created. Now let's go ahead and locate a good grounding point for that ground connection that we created. So usually next to these fuse boxes, there's always going to be a piece of metal that's part of the chassis. Simply unbolt any bolt around there and then tighten the ground towards that bolt, and it should be good. So that slot that we took out that fuse, we could insert the piggyback fuse in it and it should be good. And once connected, test it out and see if it works. And if it does, you're all set. From here you could simply start organizing it by attaching zip ties to either hide or attach it to your dash. This can be placed pretty much anywhere. In my case, I was finally able to remove the cigarette lighter adapter since I had it plugged in to my dash cam. But now since I could easily hide this USB port directly behind, I can now give it the clean OEM look, saving me from buying a hardwired dash cam kit and utilizing some stuff that I already had laying around. So there you guys have it. At this point you can pretty much drill a hole or do whatever you want to that USB outlet. So I really hope you liked this video. But as always, I hope to see you on the next video. So to show your love and support, be sure you like and subscribe to the channel if you're not. And that other button also helps out the channel. But until next time, I shall see you on the next one. Peace.